Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here, once again, to talk about Des. I know, that's it. It's just a three-letter word, Des. And the reason why I decided to talk about this now is because next Friday is going to be the release of a new Netflix special or a show, whatever, about Dennis Nilsen, or Nielsen, however you say it. And it's going to have like new recordings that have never been heard before. And I was really excited for that because I am a true crime fan. Well, I'm not necessarily a fan, but like a guy who follows them and researches and does all sorts of stuff, particularly on conspiracy angles, because more often than not, there are conspiracies involved with true crime. Whether you like to admit it or not, it's just fact at this point. I mean, it's like, there's been this narrative that they've built up over the years, the media, of like the lone serial killer who, they're all these mythical icons to the media. And, oh, you should be scared of that name or that person. And in reality, it's a lot more complicated than that and a lot more scary than that when you do your actual research. Anyways, Des was a show about Dennis Nilsen that came out last year, and it starred David Tennant playing Dennis Nelson, whatever. I really don't care how you pronounce a serial killer's name, honestly. And it's basically a sort of procedural type show, a drama, where in the first episode they catch him, and then the trouble is actually after they catch him, because it takes them 2 seconds. I mean, that was probably the funniest part of the whole show, was that they literally just wait for him to come home from work, and then they just straight up take him from there. And he doesn't even care. He literally just gives himself up in 2 seconds. And it's really strange, him doing that. And it was very odd and very, like, mysterious at first. And I really liked the first episode the most out of all of them. There's only 3 episodes, of course, in typical British fashion. And I say that, listen, I'm gonna sound like a jackass in this video because of like things like that, because this show, it's a very typical British type show. It is not for me. It's very mixed. It's very unremarkable. It's very forgettable and useless, honestly. I mean, sorry to say that, because you have one thing in the show that is fantastic, and that is David Tennant. David Tennant as Dennis Nilsen is phenomenal. He gives an award-worthy performance as Dennis Nilsen, and he does such a great job. I wasn't even expecting it, because I looked at him and then I looked at Dennis, and I thought that Dennis seemed like a bigger type guy. At least when he was in prison, he looked like a bigger type guy from what I saw. But then I saw like his home videos and such, where he looked a lot more like David Tennant, smaller and scrawnier. And I really think that the highlight of the show out of everything is David Tennant. His performance, A+ performance. It was perfect. It was so good, his performance. It's probably, I would say, either my second favorite or favorite portrayal of a real-life killer. And that's saying a lot, considering that I saw Bully this year, and Bully is like number 1 or 2. And so, yeah, there you go. It was really good in that aspect, but everything else was trash. And now let's start off with the obvious. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Come on, you guys can guess it. They sucked out all the color from this bitch. This show, you look at, I mean, the show is already about dark subject matter. But then, they get a big straw, they put it in the color milkshake, and they just suck out all the color. Because in order to make things look darker and grittier and more, like, I don't know, you know what they do, you know how they think, like, oh, because this movie looks darker and colorless, it means it's about something serious. And you know what I mean? Like, because, like, they consider color to be, like, goofy. They consider movies with color, with lots of vibrant colors, they consider those to be lesser than these types of movies and shows. So basically, it's sort of a superiority complex issue, because they love to just, whenever it's about a true crime, or it's about something serious, or something about real life, or, like, you know, nonfiction, they just suck out all the color. And I'm getting so effing sick of that. So sick of it. It is so irritating, the fact that you have this opportunity to, you know, because that's the funny thing. They showed these videos at the beginning of, like, homeless people and, like, real videos, and all of them had color in them. And then you get to the show, and it's like colorless. It's just so ugly and ugh. Who wants to look at that? So already you got an ugly picture. Now let's get to the music. The music was fine. It's not memorable. It didn't really do anything to help. So it kind of failed, because music is supposed to be helpful to whatever is going on. And it's supposed to add to what's going on, instead of just be serviceable and just be there in the background. So the music failed. Now let's get to the main issue of the show. The main issue of the show are the police. Because let's start off with the obvious. They were boring actors doing the typical boring performances that you see. And that's the funny thing, is that in order to have a police anything, in order to have a crime anything, you have to have interesting police characters. You have to have characters. You can't just have boring Joe Schmo. I mean, what was interesting about him? He was fat. That's basically all that there was to him. He was fat, and he had this curly hairdo. That's it. That's all that there was to him. What else was there about? Oh, he had a family. Who cares? Like, that's the least... That's just not important at all, unless it comes into play with the plot. And then you have all the other random, generic NPC police characters. Boring, boring, boring. That's why, if you want to take a look at another British show, that's why Broadchurch was good. Because Broadchurch had David Tennant and the curly-haired woman. And they were both great characters. In season 1 at least. And they did a really good job. And so you really got to have that. You know, just think about, like, Fargo. You got that pregnant woman investigating things. What else? Just anything. Twin Peaks. You got Agent Cooper. He's you know what he's like. He's a perfect person. He's an optimist. He's a really cool character, and he's memorable. These characters are garbage, and I know the people in real life, they might be garbage too, but you should at least do something to make them interesting. And other than that, let's get to the plot. The plot was really good in the first episode, because what happens is there's someone who finds some remains in a drain pipe, which is really gross. And this whole show was just gross. Like, it just makes you want to take a shower and just, ugh. It makes you, it made me lose my appetite too. I was eating a sandwich and I threw half of it away because it was just so gross. And, so the story was, in the first episode, they catch him, and basically he just straight up confesses to everything. But the important part is he leaves out names. And so basically they've got to piece together who these 15 homeless victims were, who they were, and what their names were. And I just thought that that was like a really cool story idea of like just it's almost like a statement within itself of like about homeless people, about people like who no one really cares about, and how like, or cared about, not that I don't care about them, but just society. And so it's like, we got to find their names, we got to find out who these people are. And just like that in itself is just really interesting to me and really like cool. But then they kind of ruined that in episode 2. In episode 2, there's a lot of stuff about this biographer, and I guess the show's based on the biography. And there's just, episode 2 is just, I think that the biggest problem with episode 2 is that real life fails the show. Because as usual in real life, you got these disgustingly evil, stupid police who don't care about the victims. They don't care about the victims' families. They don't care about anyone except themselves and their stupid police reputation. And so it's like, oh, we're not going to bother finding out who all the victims are, even though that was literally the driving force of the show. We're just going to stop doing that because we ran out of time. So sorry about all those people who died, but who cares about them? We don't have time to look for them anymore. We got to focus on our money problem. And you know what? Well, if you lose the time to look for the names of the people who are dead, who were killed for no reason, if you quote unquote don't have time for that, then I don't think that your own citizens should have time to pay you, pigs. I don't think that the citizens should have the time to support you. Because if you don't have the time to look and support your own citizens, then you can go fuck yourselves. Seriously, that really just pissed me off. These disgusting, evil police in this show. It just made me want to puke. And so that was obviously a big issue because the show is supposed to be about this evil guy and how he was a serial killer. And another thing that they don't even touch on is the fact that they never catch him. Or wait, no, like they never caught him before when he was killing people. And so you had this huge time lapse of this period of time where he was just killing people and just getting away with it, and the police didn't even notice. And there was this big prolific victim named Kenneth, and they were trying to find the killer for him, and they couldn't even find him because they're so incompetent and so trash. And so and he was right there. I mean, he just, it's just hilarious. It's so sickening. And it just shows, you really think that they were so stupid that they didn't know what was going on. I mean, that's just, and so, but they never touch on that at all. They never even make an issue of that, of course, because this is a mainstream show. It's basically the highlights of Dennis Nilsen's Wikipedia page. And that was the issue with the show as well, was that it was just very basic and very unremarkable. So, after the disappointments of real life came in the second episode, the third episode was okay. I thought that it was just another trash thing of like, they forced that guy to go on the stand who was killed by Dennis, and then Dennis resuscitated him which is just really like, ugh, just thinking about that and how they forced him to go up there and be humiliated just so that they could look good by, oh, look, we caught Dennis and we got him in prison. We won. Like, it's just sickening, these police. And I know I'm sounding like a jackass, but I don't really care because that's what this show portrayed. If this show had been more about Dennis and more about stuff like that, I wouldn't have been saying that at all. Well, I would have said it a little bit because obviously they didn't catch him and he was right there, and it was almost like they were just letting him do whatever he wanted. Like they knew what was going on and they didn't really care. That's probably what happened, to be truthful, because to just act like they had no idea. Oh my God! I mean, he was right there. He was doing this right there. It's just ridiculous. It's so unbelievable and so uh, embarrassing, to say the least. And that's what usually happens with these cases. You think like Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. What do they all have in common? They were doing it right in front of you. And nobody cared, of course. Nobody bothered to say anything. Meryl Streep, all those Hollywood people, they didn't care. They just let it go on and let it happen and just didn't care. And I think that that's the key issue with all these serial killer stories, is that more times than not, they were allowed to go on for as long as the people wanted it to go on. And then when they got fed up with them, boom, they're in prison. Boom. Just like that. And so the third episode was trash. And then you had Graham Allen, I believe that's what his name was. I'm sorry if I got it wrong, because he didn't get any justice. Because the police, they refused to name him as like an official victim or whatever in the trial. And so basically they just said F you to that. I mean, they literally had evidence that he was one of the victims. I mean, if that's not embarrassing enough, then I don't know what is. So let's get to the main point of the show, Dennis. I actually liked Dennis more than anyone else in the show. I mean, that's just awful. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you do that? It's so bad. I felt sorry for him. His story was terrifying, the way that as a kid, they showed him his dead grandfather, and he started pretending to be dead, and he had this fascination with death. Like, really, a sad story that just made you like, oh God, that's so terrible that stuff like that happened back then to all these. I bet there's tons of people who had traumatic childhoods like Dennis, and they didn't grow up to be a serial killer. And just the fact that this guy, he became one, it's sad that he couldn't get his problems worked out and that he had to take it out on others. And of course, they don't even show the victims in the show except for the one that he resuscitated, and then I think another one. So that's another thing, is that this show is very full of itself, so they refuse to show anything. So they never have a scene where he kills someone. They never have an intense scene where you think he's going to kill someone. They never do anything like that. That was a huge failure. That is a typical trademark of serial killer shows and movies that think they're above the other ones. Because let's be honest, in order to show the horror of the killer, you have to show a kill. They did that in Bully. That's why Bully was so good. They showed that kill. It was disgusting. It was horrifying. It was a traumatic scene. And it showed how evil killers are. And so that was a huge failure that they didn't have that. Another thing that they didn't have was, I was really expecting to see like an episode where we get to like see his backstory and we get to see other actors play him like growing up. And I was sad that we didn't get to see that. Another thing is that this show really doesn't do anything more than it has to. Like, this just feels like a very basic show about the serial killer Dennis Nilsen. It doesn't feel like they added anything that we've never heard about before. It just feels kind of there. So I would give this show, I'm not going to give it a food grade because it's like a 3 episode miniseries. It doesn't deserve a food grade, to be honest, because if it was a food grade, I would say like puke, because the show just was so gross and just made me want to puke. Just all the these evil crimes and just the ugh, and how he disposed and all that stuff. I don't even want to go into it because I don't want to talk about that for hours and hours. Ew. This video is already too long. I mean, come on. I don't know why. I thought this would be like a 5-minute video, but I give this show a C. It's average. It's there. The only thing that's good about it is David Tennant. David Tennant gave a fantastic performance that was too good for this show. So, I can't wait to watch the Netflix special. Other than that, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and then comment. Tell me about Dennis Nilsen and about what you think about how the police basically gave up on finding the victims' names. Because I thought that would make like a really interesting story of like trying to find these people, trying to find out who these people were, and it's just they failed that. They just gave up. I mean, it was sickening. Okay. No, you know what the saddest moment of the whole show was? The moment that really made me want to tear up was the fact that it turned out that Bleep had been put down because Bleep was sick. And that was really, really sad because we had found out that Dennis had this thing about he was afraid that people would abandon him. And so, and he was a very lonely person. And so the fact that his dog, the only thing that he had that he loved and didn't kill, died and was put to sleep. And so it's like he had nothing. And he had nothing to lose. And I really felt sorry for him because of that, because of losing that one thing that he loved. I mean, it's really sad. So rest in peace to Bleep, because that was the saddest moment of the whole show. So goodbye, everybody. See you soon.